You called us at the perfect time. You made the right decision in getting your whole house redevised and just do it instead of just doing a temporary fix.
It's much easier than people thinking we're trying to sell them something. When we can actually show them the evidence, it's just wear and tear. Yeah, man. So I started the day pretty good today. I got up, jumped on the floor, and started doing some push-ups, did some stretches, did about a 1.5 mile walk with the dog, a little bit of running. How about you, man? How'd your day start?
Started out well. I actually woke up a little bit earlier than usual. Of course, the dogs needed to go and pee, so I wake up with them 5 in the morning, and I'm like, hey, might as well get up and just start doing stuff. I shaved for you today too. I wanted to talk to you about the job for yesterday that we did. Customers were super happy. We got everything taken care of for them.
Yeah, that's what we love to hear.
But the whole process at the beginning was an emergency call that that I went to go do. It was at a it's not an RV, but what are those modular homes that they stick together? They're huge. They're basically like a
Mobile park.
somewhat, but it's pretty big. It's on a big property.
The modular.
So anyway, so the modular home was from, oh geez, it was built in like the 80s. Customers have used us in the past already. So I got there, they had some issues with some plugs in the living room. Circuits weren't working, and their breakers, they were resetting regularly. I got there and did a diagnostic.
Was it a double wide or single wide?
It's a double wide, so it's pretty big.
So double wides, when they park them, they have to bolt them back together.
Is that what
They ship them in 2 different sections, and then they attach them, and they have to connect the electrical from one side to the other side.
it had? A 150 amp sub panel.
Okay, so it was a good sized home.
It's pretty good size. It's actually probably, it's bigger than mine as far as square feet wise. I'm guessing probably close to the 2,000
Nice.
square feet. So it's pretty decent size.
So 80s, so it's Romex breakers, no fuses.
And it was copper.
Copper.
It wasn't aluminum. That was a good thing. So went there and did the diagnostic on it, and I started taking stuff apart. Once I started taking stuff apart, I started at the panel. I took a look at their panel, and their panel was a pretty old panel. Not old enough to where it wasn't a Zinsco, let's just say that. I looked inside and there was like multiple different other breakers inside. There was Siemens breaker, there was Eaton breaker, and there was Square D breaker.
Yeah, it's common.
So, so I, did some tests on their breaker. I also did a thermal imaging just to check. It didn't go like how I planned it because there was no load on it. Because, that was the thing. So it looked normal.
What breakers were tripping? What circuits? Or were they
It was 2 in the living room, and there were 20 amp circuits too. I went inside. I did notice some voltage fluctuating at their breakers. I went inside and I started taking apart her plugs. Backstabbed receptacle number 12. As soon as I pulled off some of the receptacles, there's no screws on the left and right hand side.
I don't remember now in the 80s. Did they allow number 12 gauge in the 80s on Backstab?
That's the thing, is that the house said it was built there in the 80s, but it could have been built prior to that.
Well, there was an era somewhere around probably late 80s, somewhere where they only allowed 14 gauge wire on a backstab receptacle, but electricians would drill them out so they could fit a 12 gauge wire in a.
He had a friend there too that tried to fix one of the plugs, and that's when they called us, kind of do it yourself.
Yeah.
That type of deal. And so he had all the wires backstab, and then he had like 2 wires landed on one left side of the screw, one right side of the screw on the new plug, and they couldn't figure it out. So I started taking apart other stuff, and as soon as I pulled the plugs that are number 12 backstab, some of them just pop right out. And when they popped out, I noticed on where it was backstabbing in that it's like little scorch lines.
Yeah.
Because it arced across it.
Well, you're aware, that's why they stopped allowing 12 gauge wire in a backstab receptacle, because that's just too much of a load for that particular type of connection. Any big loads on it, like space heaters or anything, or was it just lights, buzz? Or
I think the only thing that was big load on it was the guy's fish tank that was that he had, for his heater and the pump and all that. So I was guessing maybe around 7 or 8 amps. It shouldn't have overloaded. It shouldn't have tripped that thing.
But a constant load.
It was a constant.
These tanks are going to run all the time. So.
Correct. Yeah. I sat down with the customer. I'm like, hey, you have a bigger issue than just this circuit here. I can do a temporary fix on this circuit, but this is through your whole house. On one of the plugs too, when I plugged in my plug-in tester and I let go of it, it just fell right out.
So they're worn out receptacles.
Yeah, so now you have loose connection points where you plug into. You have loose connection points at the back of the device. Then you got breakers from, the 80s.
Did they say when they were tripping, or were they just tripping randomly?
It was tripping randomly. Okay. Also, too, they had equipment failures in other areas. This is where I'm kind of like leading on to. I basically had to explain to the customer why this is tripping and what's happening to get a permanent fix for them. So, you can do the temporary fix, just fix that circuit and then call us back a couple weeks later, fix another circuit, call us back later, fix another one. And so anyway, so you're looking at, a ton of money that the customer's going to call us back every time they need an emergency service.
More cost effective to
It is more cost effective.
Let's fix the future problems that we know are going to happen now.
I showed the customer, actually all three of them, the plugs. We took pictures and everything. We took pictures of the areas it was arcing. And I had to explain to them, like, arcing produces a lot of heat. It also takes a lot of
Were you getting arcing in those backstab plugs? That's where you're saying you saw the arc marks on the wires?
Yeah, you can actually see the neutral wire. It was arcing off the neutral too, that it was arcing so much that it was cooking the neutral wire from white to black, and then it like graduated to brown. So it was basically
getting hot. Yeah.
It was getting hot.
There was no pigtailing in the box, right?
No pigtail. Your original,
You're daisy chaining right through that receptacle.
Yeah. So it goes from plug to plug to plug to plug to plug, right? So you got weak points here at the beginning with the breakers. You got weak point at each individual plug down the line. So by the time you get to his fish tank, it's arcing at each one of those locations. I also plugged in my plug-in tester and hooked up my voltage meter, and we actually applied a load, and we can see the voltage just fluctuating.
Fighting to get through those poor connections.
Yeah, so
plug that you plug your tester in that was worn out. What were they using? What did they use that plug for?
That plug they weren't using. Actually, they used mainly that one for vacuuming, but that was part of the chain of that leads into his fish tank. Explaining it to the customer on why they need a whole house redevice, why they need a new panel, or we can, if they're low on funds or whatnot, they can do a panel rejuvenation, but I would have to take a look at the bus bar a little closer at the bus bar. At the end, I sat him down, I kind of explained everything, and I even asked him, hey, are you having equipment failures through the house? And it's like, yeah, we have, our washer we just replaced. We have a couple of microwaves, standalone microwaves that keep on going out. We had other equipment. So I'm like, well, this is due to backstabbed receptacle. And I had to explain to them, because you can't just go, hey, you need a whole house redevice. So you have to explain them in term of math or something that they understand. And luckily the husband was, he does welding and he does all this other mechanical stuff.
Yeah, so he's mechanically inclined. He understands.
The first thing I told him was arcing. Arcing takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy for electrons to jump across the air to land onto something.
Which is where you're getting your voltage fluctuation, which is why you're lessening the life expectancy of your appliances. You're having appliances fail because they're getting too much voltage fluctuation.
Our equipment are not meant to handle voltage fluctuation. Very minute voltage, but not like 4, 5, or 6 volts.
Right.
Up and down constantly. At the end, they're like, okay, well, we want to move forward with the whole house redevice. We started doing the whole house redevice. We started taking plugs and everything apart.
So they saw the value in the recommendation of redevice on the house by all the stuff you showed them and the worn out items.
Yeah, and Marcus too, when he was pulling plugs apart in certain areas that was part of that daisy chain, some of the wires were cooked so far back that it was really hard for him to strip out and pigtail it out. And we took pictures and showed the customers like, hey, you called us at the perfect time. You made the right decision in getting your whole house redevice, and just do it instead of just doing a temporary fix.
I love that. It's much easier than people thinking we're trying to sell them something. When we can actually show them the evidence, it's just wear and tear.
I actually showed him at that time of the plug that his friend came over and helped him and tried to do. And I'm like, that's
good information.
Yeah.
When they can tell us that kind of information, we know we're the electrician. A lot of people know enough to make it work, but they don't quite understand the hazards of a worn out electrical system. So I love it. Great job.